Hello, my dears, and welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. This episode is brought to you by Atto Aesthetics, the #1 coaching company for spa industry professionals who want to step into the role of spa CEO. And as we grow in that role as CEO, one of the decisions that we need to make is how to diversify our portfolio. How do we not put all of our eggs in one basket? That's a really important part of wealth building. Now, oftentimes when we're thinking about that, the natural progression for a spa owner is, how do I purchase commercial real estate? How do I buy my building, right? I immediately, right now, just off the top of my head, can think of 4 different spa CEOs inside of our Growth Factor program that are in this process right now. So how do you even get started, right? I mean, it can seem so out of reach. It can seem like that's only what, the super wealthy people do. But I hope that right after this episode with my friend Annette, you will feel that it is much closer for you, okay? So as you hear in this episode, Annette started her career in banking. She transitioned to build a real estate company with $20 million in revenue before selling it and moving into her next adventure, where she owns 2 very successful companies. It was such a great honor to have her on the show. I'm so grateful that she agreed to share some of her precious time to shed light on this topic for our community. So let me just do a quick read of her bio, and then we will jump right into the episode. So Annette Walter is a CEO who owns and operates 2 companies and is also a mom of 2. Timber Industries is the largest 100% woman-owned pallet, crating, and lumber distributor in the U.S. iEvolve Consulting is a growth strategy and operations business coaching firm. Annette is a guiding force for her clients who are business owners and entrepreneurs scaling their businesses with Annette's guidance. In conjunction with iEvolve Consulting, Annette hosts the Entrepreneur Evolution podcast, which will hit 200 episodes this summer. If you can't tell from the bio, you'll certainly hear it in our episode. This woman is incredibly intelligent, incredibly successful, and just a really genuinely good person. I'm so excited to share this interview with you, and enjoy. Annette, I am so excited to have you on the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. This is going to be such a good conversation. And when I knew I wanted to talk about commercial real estate, you were the first person that came to mind. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, wow. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Okay. So we met, we were in the same mastermind. Mm-hmm. You now run an executive coaching business. It's called iEvolve. You own a company called Timber Industries. You're well into the 8 figures in that. It started all with real estate. You built a real estate company that you then sold and moved in this direction. But real estate is something that you know a ton about, have experience with. What got you into real estate in the first place? How did that journey start for you?
Well, it actually all started in banking, believe it or not. So my banking career is what propelled me into starting my real estate firm in 2007, which is quite the story to tell. Thankfully, it was a successful ending, but those were quite interesting times for sure for real estate. But it was really the foundation of my banking career that gave me all of that fundamental knowledge and all of that awareness of how financing works, how structuring different business deals and real estate transaction works. And that was really, I think, what came to mind as you were saying that. How did I get started in real estate?
So if you're comfortable, I don't know how comfortable you are with numbers, but what did you build that real estate company up to?
Okay, absolutely. And I love your audience. I love everyone that you're helping. So I will be as open, as transparent as you want me to. So we started actually with 35 people. And in 2012, we actually grew that to 17 locations and 300 plus people and 20 million in revenue. And if you remember that time frame,
I want to pause you there. The reason that I was asking you that question is because you said we started in 2007. There's obviously the crash in 2008, people are so right now, there's a feeling of, oh my God, is there going to be a recession? Is there going to be whatever? And I knew that you built that to a very high number. And I think that it's important to note some of the biggest and best businesses are built in times of recession.
Absolutely.
So whether we have a recession or not, it's all about being a strategic business owner and focusing, because there's always opportunity. Always opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay, go on with what you're going to say. I just wanted to like put that in the ears of everybody that's like,
yes,
how do I do this? What's going on? You know,
in fact, it's funny to all my clients right now. I've been saying, we are going into opportunistic times. I do not say we are going into a recession. This economy that we are going into will be severely different than what we witnessed and what we have in our rearview mirror from 2008 for sure. But just to rewind to 2007 to 2012, the real estate market in 2012 hadn't yet turned yet. So when you're growing a company, when you're scaling a company, especially with that significant growth, you're really building your structure, outgrowing it quickly, building your structure again and outgrowing it to get from that 0 to 20 million in 5 quick years. There wasn't a glimmer of hope at that point. So while we were operationally building the structure of the company, we were also talking to suitors behind the scenes. So to investors, if they wanted to come in and buy the company. So some of the larger names in real estate that are out there. And what happened is actually we had built such a significant footprint in this DC Baltimore metro area that the company that bought us, who happened to be Prudential, needed our territory to then make the place so that they could sell to Berkshire Hathaway. So the footprint that we created here, it happened to be residential real estate at the time, really launched us into make a play for another company. So I know I'm getting a little bit into mergers and acquisitions there, but I just want to kind of paint that picture that you never know what type of opportunities there are. And, the buyer that is looking at you, or even let's talk real estate, the seller of a dwelling that you're trying to buy, you never know what type of circumstance they're in, right? What their strategy is, what they have going on behind the scenes, where their weaknesses are, where their cash flow management, kind of issues may be. So you really can't rule out anything.
Yeah. And I feel like commercial real estate, and I want to just kind of pivot just a little bit here, because I think you're such a great, as a serial entrepreneur, such a great person to talk through with this. With spas, and especially when you're getting into the 7 figures, like it's a natural progression in building wealth and building your portfolio to diversify. Right? Yes. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. And making that transition into commercial real estate, do I own my building? If I sell my company, I still have this asset of this building that's building wealth. I'm not paying, $5,000 a month for rent in a big space or whatever it is. I'm actually building an asset. How do you mentally make that transition? Because as you're growing, a lot of our spa owners, they start as solo estheticians, literally renting a room, hustling hard for that first 100,000. And now they're like, okay, wow, I'm actually, hitting 1 million. I'm building this team. And I can't even believe that I'm thinking about buying a building. How do you go through that procession? What's the pathway? And what do we not know that we should be knowing?
Absolutely. That's a great question. First of all, not to be afraid. Okay. And yes, you should absolutely buy a building. You should absolutely buy the building that you are going to be operating your business out of. And this is just, don't be afraid of it. And if you have built your business along the way, chances are you have built up your informal advisory board, and that consists of your wealth advisor, your accountant, your attorney, right? Your banker, right? Having really solid relationships with your informal advisory board is so important, because if you keep them posted along the way of, I have a vision that I want to buy this building, I want to buy a building, as I get to new levels in my business, they can start telling you things and steering you to things based on the uniqueness of your business and where you are, of what to look out for or what to be aware of, or how to reposition things internally to help you set up for that acquisition. So I really want to, first of all, assure people that it can be done, even if you aren't necessarily, a money person, right? Let's say you're more of a creative and a hands-on person in your business. Making sure that you're asking the right questions and that you have the right people around you to help you, even your coach, people like coming to you because you have this advice, right? You know this. But it is so important, because when you make that leap to buying commercial property, whether it's for your business or for other purposes to build your wealth portfolio, your dollars are making money for you, instead of you, the sole practitioner, trading your time for money, or your team and those that work with you trading their time for money, right? So at this point, your money is actually making money for you.
But what are those questions that we should be asking? Like, I feel like maybe a lot of people, I don't know a lot of people, but I personally feel very comfortable with residential real estate. But when you get into commercial real estate, it's like, okay, is the down payment the same? Are the insurances the same? Do you have to have like a building inspector? And then there's the whole thing of like, if you're operating your building, yes, that's one thing. But if you are a landlord, like we get into TI dollars and leases and all these things that are like a foreign language to a lot of people, right?
Right. Well, and also in your advisory board, having a solid commercial real estate agent to be on the search for you. They can run a lot of that cost analysis for you. They'll run a lot of that reporting for you. So let me rewind to answer your question. Is commercial parallel to the residential experience, to that transaction? I would say, to answer that question simply, they are very similar. I'll start with the financing piece. When you finance a commercial building, and it depends on how it's zoned and what type of structure it is, if it's an independent dwelling, or if you're looking at an office building that might have tenants and you're going to be occupying one of the offices in there. It all depends. You want to make sure what type of dwelling it is, right? The actual unit. And then also how it's zoned. Those things are going to be coming into play. But when you're talking financing with commercial, you can typically find down payment options for the 20%, the 25%, and the 30%. And that depends on if you're occupying it or not, and if you're going the SBA route or the traditional financing route, okay? And so that's to put it simply. So they're very similar. You do get an appraisal, and you do get an inspection. You have an inspection. And then you also go to a title company or law firm, depending on what your bank requires, to close it. So in that regard, the transaction is fairly similar. Mm-hmm. But what happens is what I said in the beginning is whether you're dealing with what type of dwelling, the actual dwelling, the units, and then the zoning. Those things can be somewhat slightly different.
Now, let's say that I'm buying a unit in a building. Would I have like a commercial version of a HOA?
That depends. Sometimes, if it depends on that actual uniqueness of that unit and the dwelling. Sometimes there are condos, and it is zoned commercially, but it is actually kind of labeled as the dwelling of being an actual condo. And if that, property, the overall property has condo fees, then yes, you could potentially have something like that. But that just depends on the uniqueness of that property. But that's a good question.
So is there a certain, level of business that you should be at before you look at purchasing commercial?
That's a good question too. So I have some of my clients, most of my clients are now at that pace around 3 to 5 million and beyond. They really have their eye on that $25 million. And looking back, rewinding a couple years back, it's the first thing that I tell them to do is like, when is your lease up? We look at their lease, we evaluate their lease, and we say, okay, when this is done, how can you buy a building? I don't want you to not think about buying a building. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I can do it. Well, let's start preparing now. Mm-hmm. So clients with revenues around that $500,000 mark have gone into their first building. And what does that building look like? What does that actual dwelling unit look like? It looks like a little house, okay, that happens to be zoned commercial, based on, the type of street that it's on in the city, right? This was an education like tutoring company, but there happens to be a lot of different law firms that happen to be in these little houses. Yep. Hopefully you can picture what I'm talking about.
I know exactly. Yeah. And you see that a lot in small towns too. There's
absolutely. Yeah. It's zoned commercial, but it happens to just be a little house. In fact, the office that I'm in right now, it was formerly, this is two owners ago, it was a hair salon. And then it was bought by a jewelry making company. And then I bought it back in November of 2018. So same type of thing. It's a 3-story building. I happen to rent out the basement because it is set up as a separate dwelling. But both of my companies occupy this. And it's a house that is zoned commercially.
That's cool. And so you have a place to operate your business.
Mm-hmm.
You have great deductions to take off of your profit and loss and your financial statements. And you also have a building that's building value, building equity.
Yes.
So should you ever, as right now, and even just a couple months ago when we were at the peak of whatever is going on with real estate, should you have wanted to sell your building, you could have made a pretty significant profit just from that with nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had it reappraised just a few short months ago. And I think since 2018, it's already increased 75,000 in value. That's with us really not doing much. But what we've done is, we've leveraged that into buying other properties, right? So it's almost like the game of Monopoly. And once you kind of get the bug, you don't want to stop. Mm-hmm. Right now, I always have our commercial real estate agent looking out there for us, whether I feel financially prepared and ready at that moment or not. I just always have them looking for things. Right now, I happen to be looking for a different warehouse space and different open land space just for the types of materials that we handle at Timber Industries. And then also I have him looking for a multi-unit office building that has lots of different tenants in it, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the market for that right now.
So when you first buy a residential house, you think, okay, I've got my 20% down. I go through all my closing costs, all the things, I do that. But then you move in and it's like, you feel like you've got to buy a new piece of furniture here. You've got to do this there. And there's all these other expenses that you're like, I didn't count on that. Does that happen with commercial real estate too? Or is that just me?
Absolutely. Yes, okay. No, absolutely. But that would happen with a lease build out and a lease moving into a new property too. So if you're growing and you're expounding, your space is basically, you're going to move into bigger space. So I have seen people basically go to do a build out and they're renting the space and it's cost them more than actually buying. And it honestly, it just makes it just makes me sad because if they could only see a little bit past that fear, past that safety net, past that comfort zone, they would see that honestly, the rent, it ends up being more than the actual mortgage payment would be. And a lot of times it's the exact same cost for move-in, if not more, because you're paying to improve somebody else's property, right? When you're buying, when you're leasing.
100%. 100%. Now, talk me through, because I, in the past couple of years, learned about business credit, have been really focusing on that, like to have a firewall between my personal and my business. When you're purchasing commercial real estate, what is a bank looking at if you want your company to purchase it rather than you, the individual, to really maintain that firewall?
Well, you definitely want it to be in the name of an LLC. For all the properties that I buy, they all have their single unique LLC, okay? Which I own 100% of as the member. So they will look at your personal credit, because if you're the single member of that LLC, you are still financing it, okay? So they will look at all of your personal stuff. Banks these days, I haven't seen any banks recently not ask for personal guarantees, with the exception of some things, okay? If you have, it depends on how you can cross-collateralize things, okay? I don't know if this is too big of a term or too much, but depending on what types of businesses you are operating, and if the actual, you can really get creative with some financing strategies behind the scenes without going too much into the weeds and the details there. Oftentimes, if you have a big, you just have to talk to a banker. It's really important to talk to a banker, and for your banker to know your entire business portfolio and your financial picture as well. They will more than likely, though, ask you for a personal financial statement. And on a personal financial statement, you are outlining your personal net worth. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it is important that you are always looking and have really strong credit and have a really strong personal financial statement, because that 9 times out of 10 comes into play when you are proceeding with commercial financing in this market. In this snapshot of a market, banks still kind of rebounding from 2008. They got a little lenient there with some of their financing, but now they're kind of putting back their armor to protect themselves going into the next market, right? Mm-hmm. So, and especially with what business owners just went through with COVID, they are really trying to protect themselves. And what that means is that they want to see everything and anything about the business and the business operator and the owner.
So in the beginning of this call, you mentioned that we are going into an opportunistic time. What does that mean for you in terms of commercial real estate for the business owner?
It means that, first of all, cash is king. So make sure that you have a stash of really solid cash beyond your reserves to make some really strong plays. Not only through looking for the perfect property for you, but possibly through other mergers and acquisitions of buying other companies, because this is when I believe the strong get stronger. And unfortunately, it weeds out those businesses that may not be as prepared as those that are in your audience and your clients, Danielle. Oh. Okay. So I just think it's like, I've been through a few of these. I'm not that old. I know what you're thinking, but I've been through a few of these economic downturns, starting out with the tech bubble back in, the late 1999, 2001 range. And then the cycle of 2008, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be an economy. There's always going to be an economy, whether it's great or whether it's low. Anybody can run a business in a great economy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's those business owners that really are conditioned, have the mental toughness, have the right resources, have the strong advisors around them to help them, the trusted advisors, right? Not those that are trying to sell you something, right? But those that are really smart and strategic and get you, and know your risk tolerance, know your trust level, that those are the ones that are going to really thrive in those down markets. But there's always going to be a cycle. And once you kind of get your head wrapped around that, it's almost like a fun game to play. Do you know what I mean?
I love that.
I feel like I like running a business better. I should knock on wood, but you never know what can happen. We had COVID in there too. That was a good cycle. But, it's more fun to run a business in like a downturn than an upturn, because in an upturn, people get bored. They get, Well,
my thought process was, especially for spa owners, I'm like, you guys, we just went through 2 years of every spa in the country being shut down for at some point, and you're still here.
Yes.
Like what you did to make that happen, to show up for your clients, to, pivot towards e-com, or to do, like all the different things that we did to keep the doors open, keep our clients connected and all of that. For me, that seems a million times harder than a recession. A million times harder. But I feel like emotionally, people are they're tired because they've been, it's been a stressful, uncertain time.
Yes.
And a lot of people, including myself, right? I am a creature of routine. I like predictability. That's not really like the DNA of an entrepreneur is like, all right, we're going to figure it out. And everything is unpredictable. And so if you are more in this like routine stability type of person, then it can be challenging. It can be challenging to go through that, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible, right? It doesn't at all. Okay. Last thing, I just want to wrap up with this. And then if you have anything else that you feel like our audience should know, but where does one go? Like, how do you find a commercial real estate agent? I imagine you're wanting to interview them and make sure that you have a good relationship. But, I imagine it's probably not on Zillow, or, like, how are you finding these people?
That's a great question. So whenever I start with anything, I always go out to my network. The warm network introductions are always the best ones, in my opinion. I would shy away from any, I hope I'm not misspeaking or whatever, but personally, I would shy away from anyone that works for a typically residential firm. Okay. They are different beasts. And this is just me based on knowing and having, lots of real estate agents under us. Sometimes that residential real estate agent will put on that commercial hat. But I like to hire only those that are specifically commercially driven. Okay. So they only wear that commercial hat. And you don't need to go to the big firms out there. I would ask your network for really that kind of in between. So someone that has his or her own smaller commercial real estate firm. And you just have to really start to go out there. Mine came from actually someone that I reached out to. He was one of my clients and he had bought multiple buildings. So I said, who do you use? Who do you like? Who has a great name? Who has a great eye? He was specifically buying in a particular, actually on a particular road that I had my eye on. So that's how I narrowed in. So someone will come to you, hopefully based on something that I'm saying right now, but those are kind of what I would steer away from and where I would go. But you just have to ask. I mean, anything in business is just asking, right?
So at Chamber of Commerce, at BNI events, or at any of these networking types of things, start there. If you have community groups or mastermind groups that you're in, any of those business connections, just start asking. And it is kind of like a chain. Like if somebody knows, even if they don't know a particular commercial real estate individual to recommend, they may know someone who does. So just putting the word out there to start letting it be known that that's something that you're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very good. Is there anything I'm not asking you that I should be?
Let me see. I'm just looking at my notes. You covered, a lot of things here. You covered, The one thing that we didn't talk about is really kind of controlling the occupancy cost versus leasing versus owning. You never know when prices might spike on you or from the landlord standpoint. So we actually did kind of touch on that. I think we covered everything. I really do.
Wonderful. All right. Well, if anyone wants to learn more about you, see what you're up to, where can they find you, follow you, stay in touch with you?
Absolutely. On Instagram, I am at iEvolve Daily. And actually, you can email me at urock@iEvolveconsulting.com if you have any questions about commercial real estate or some of the M&A stuff that we talked about today. I'm happy to answer any questions for your audience whatsoever.
Thank you so much. And as always, if you want to keep this conversation going, head on over to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast, the Facebook group, and we'll keep it up over there. I'll catch you on the next episode.